Hey everyone, Copy RTB here with Mason McDuffie Mortgage. The Fed just announced that they're cutting the Fed funds rates by 100 basis points, or basically 1%. What does this mean? Does this mean that your interest rate now goes down by 1%? Stick around to find out more. Good morning, everyone. Copy RTB here with Mason McDuffie Mortgage. Hope you guys are doing well and hope you guys are healthy in these unprecedented times that we are going through. I know a lot of you have reached out to me over the last 12 hours or so since the Fed met with their emergency meeting to cut the Fed funds rates by 100 basis points and some additional factors that they're taking into effect to help the economy during these times. So wanted to get this message out to you guys. What does this mean to you as a homeowner, as a home buyer? And what does this mean to mortgage rates and how this affects your buying power and also your refinance transactions that we currently have going on? First off, what the Fed announced is that they're going to cut their Fed funds rates by 100 basis points from all the way down to zero, essentially. They also announced that they are going to be purchasing about $700 billion in treasuries and the bonds to help with liquidity that's going on in the market. They've also announced that they are going to remove the Dodd-Frank ruling where banks have to keep about 10% of their deposits on hand in case of emergencies. So what does this all mean to you? First off, by the Fed cutting the rate by 100 basis points, does this mean that your interest rate now goes down by 100 basis points? And that answer is no. The Fed funds rates does not affect mortgage rates. It affects what the banks charge each other overnight to lend money to each other. It's a way that the banks can keep liquidity going and can keep the banking system moving along at any point when they need to borrow any money. This does affect your home equity lines of credit. So your home equity loans will go down at the next time that it is reviewed. So that will affect that, but it does not have a direct effect on mortgage rates. Now, they also said that they're going to be purchasing $700 billion within the market. And out of that, $200 billion is going to go towards mortgage-backed securities. So that will help bring down interest rates a little bit from what they're doing, as we'll see as the markets react throughout today and the rest of the week, how that is going to affect it. And we'll get into that here in a little bit. But they are going to buy about $200 billion in mortgage-backed securities. On top of that, they're going to stop the runoff of their portfolio. And what that means is currently, if you have a mortgage that is owned within the mortgage-backed securities that the Fed owns, when you pay off that loan, whether it's through a refinance or you sell your loan or you just pay it off, the Fed has been allowing those funds basically to go away, and they're not reinvesting it. What they're now going to do is, as you pay down your loan or pay off your loan, what they're going to do is take that money and repurchase back mortgage-backed securities. So again, it's a way to stimulate the mortgage-backed securities to help keep interest rates low. So another really good positive news that came out of the news last night. The other is that they have removed the Dodd-Frank ruling where the banks have to keep at least 10% liquidity, 10% of their deposits on hand in case of an emergency. So what they're essentially doing is allowing the banks to have more liquidity within the market to go out and lend this money. So they're really helping the banks out with that. The other thing to take a look at is that the runoff that they're going to be stopping with the with the loans that are being paid off, probably going to add about another 200 billion, to what they're going to be purchasing. So again, good for the marketplace. Now, what does this mean to interest rates? Now, if you take a look here, currently mortgage-backed securities are up about 142 basis points as of right now, which is a really good thing. As that price goes up, the yields on it, mortgage rates actually come down. So this has been actually really good. Earlier this morning, we opened up at around 180 basis points up, but have come down off those lows. So if we take a look to see kind of what's been going on over the last several weeks, as you see here, I'm going to do a little drawing here. This has been a nice decrease in interest rates that we have seen over the last several weeks. This goes all the way back to about mid-February. As you see, from mid-February all the way up to about the beginning, about March 9th, we saw interest rates come down pretty dramatically, which has been really great. A lot of you guys, we have you locked in, saved that interest rate and saving a lot of money. Now, what's happened over last week was that we saw a lot of volatility in the market. We saw the stock market down 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 points, and then the next day up 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 points. And this is what you're seeing here. With that volatility, we saw mortgage-backed securities, the price of those go down, which means interest rates went up. Now, as you see here, we went about from February 18th to about March 9th, that 2-week span, we saw interest rates go down, and we gave it all back within a matter of 3 or 4 days, as you see here. Now, over the last day, today and on Friday, we saw mortgage-backed securities improve a little bit, so we saw interest rates improve just a tad bit. One of the things that happened during this time when interest rates were going up, there was an issue with the liquidity. Banks needed money to be able to lend out. So what they ended up doing, instead of money coming from the stock market into the bond market, they actually ended up having to sell the bonds that they were holding onto to have more liquidity. This is what the Fed was helping with last night with their announcement. That's going to help with the liquidity issue and help with the banks being able to borrow money and lend money to consumers. Now, one thing to take notice here, this is today's chart. As you see, we spiked all the way up to where we were about a week ago in mortgage-backed securities, but have pulled back from that timing. So there's a little bit of a ceiling of resistance that's going on there. So we got to keep that in mind as far as how much interest rates are going to improve. The other factor that nobody's talking about, but you guys do need to know, is with interest rates going down as much as they did, there was a lot of applications that came in. There's a lot of loans that are in process, and banks just do not have the capacity to handle this much volume all at once. Currently, there's estimated that there's about $5 trillion of mortgages that can be refinanced for people to save money on their mortgage interest rates. And of that, that's what can happen as of right now. Now, typically in a year, the mortgage markets, we do about maybe $2 trillion a year in refinances alone. So to have $5 trillion that can be done as of right now, obviously there's going to be capacity issues. And one thing that we have noticed is for the banks to slow this down is they've actually increased interest rates, or have not given us, when markets have improved like they have today, we may not see that full improvement today just because of capacity issues. So that's one thing to kind of keep in mind, is that capacity, banks are going to kind of slow down the amount of volume that's coming in by not giving us the benefit of the price improvements that we may be seeing. Think of it like when oil prices, when they shoot up, all of a sudden gas prices go up pretty quickly. However, when the price of oil comes down, the gas stations, you don't see them giving us that benefit right away. It's a slower process. It's like Apple, when you got lines out the door for people to come in to buy that new Apple iPhone, they only have a capacity of so much that they have on that they can sell, and they also know that there's a line out the door, and they don't need to give it all away right now. So that is part of what we are currently seeing. And obviously, as this goes on, we'll see kind of how the markets are going to react. And again, as you see, we're up about 144 basis points today. We'll see what that means to interest rates and whether or not the banks will give us some benefit of that. Again, this is obviously a very volatile market. We're in a position that we haven't seen because of the coronavirus and ever. So this is a very moving target. We're definitely going to keep our eyes on this. And again, if you guys have any questions, always reach out. Let me know if there's anything that we can do to help you out. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.